Welcome to the flow.
Hello, my darling. How are you today? Welcome to a new episode of Zentara Flow. Today, I want to talk to you about, I would say one word, but really there are two that really changed my life. And before I tell you what that or those words are, I just want to give you a quick kind of introduction on how they are linked to that story and the change that they provoked within my life. So, if you saw the first episode or the intro where I talked about why I created Zentara Flow and that I was going through a depression and how that depression was kind of a catalyst for me to really like reconnect with myself and figure out that there were many things that weren't working and that I needed to change in order for me to live a better, fuller, more fulfilled life. Well, basically, within the first months, probably, of me realizing that I was in a very bad place and that I didn't know exactly what was going on, but I kind of realized or recognized that I needed help and that I needed to do something different in order for me to get out of that situation. I started going to therapy, and within some months, probably, I'm not sure exactly about I can't remember the exact timeline, right? But it doesn't really matter for the purpose of this story because the point is that I feel I believe that life, God, source, the universe, whatever you want to call it, is always talking to us through different situations, persons, even posts and whatnot. And so I feel like around that time when this very peculiar thing happened, I had been hearing about the idea of focus for a while, but it never really resonated or kind of dawned on me. And then one day, I don't know, maybe it was the hundredth or the millionth time I was listening to it, and it just kind of clicked. It made sense. And I don't know if it was a podcast or a movie or whatever the hell it was. Honestly, I don't even know, but it just kind of made sense to me right then and there. And it was, I don't know, maybe like a Tuesday, and I was home. And I remember having this idea of saying, okay, tomorrow I will, to the best of my capability, pay attention to how I react to things. Just like normal things that happen throughout my day, right? And so I set the intention, and then the next morning, I had set my alarm about around 7 a.m. and it goes off. So I, as we all do, try to like start looking for my cell phone, extend my arm, trying to reach for it. And as I'm doing that, instead of turning off the alarm, it falls to the ground. My cell phone falls to the ground. And so I had been awake for 5, 10, probably 20 seconds. And I already was like beast mode on, right? I was like, oh my God, fucking shit. Why? Blah, 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 fee, fi, fo, super pissed, right? Go ahead, go to ground, grab the cell phone, put it back, super pissed. Like I don't just gently put it back. I'm like, bah, right? And I'm like, ah, ha, 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 la, 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 ta, ta, ta. I get up, and as I make my way towards the toilet, I hit I hit my bed with the pinky toe, which we've all been there at least once in our lives and know how painful that situation is. And so there I go again. Fee, fi, fo, da, 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 da. And basically, long story short, I mean, it was 2 hours in, maybe 3 hours in of my day, and I had already complained about tiny, irrelevant, insignificant things, like they were the end of the world, about 15 times. And so I didn't even need the whole day to realize, like, holy shit, this is not okay, right? And it's interesting because back uh, when that happened, I was working a 9 to 5, and my colleagues, they obviously knew me quite well. We shared a lot of time and meetings and whatnot, and it was a series of events and situation, not just that one, but I feel like all of them in a very noticeable way in a relatively short period of time made me change a lot of my attitudes and my way of being. And this specific one that I'm telling you about was definitely a very big one for me to go through that change. Because at the beginning of this story, I told you it was not just one word, it's two of them. For the first one is focus, right? Focusing on how I was reacting. And that is the second one, like my observation to my behavior, or more specifically to the reaction that I had to certain things in my life, was such a major turning point for me, specifically that day. Because what I guess, like the even more important side of this, beyond the observation, the focus, and the observation of the reaction, was the effect that that reaction was having in my life. The understanding that basically, as humans, we are this little like antennas, right? We're always signaling a certain frequency, a certain vibration. So basically, emotions are vibrations. And those vibrations are kind of the signal that we're putting outwards to the universe, to life, to God, to source, to whatever you identify with or call it, even to the quantum field. If you're agnostic or if you don't have a belief, at the end of the day, it is scientifically proven that we are energy. And therefore, our bodies are like this antenna that is vibrating at a certain frequency. And what you put out is what you get in return. That's the law of correspondence. As within, so without, right? And so that day, when I realized that I was complaining about the tiniest and most insignificant of things, it kind of really dawned on me that I was creating so much, let's call it like vibrational noise, vibrational garbage, that I didn't need. Because the thing is, think about a radio station, right? And there are, I don't know, 10, 15, 12, I don't even know how many different radio stations or frequencies that you can tune in when you are in your car, for example. And so you know that X station will give you rock, and another one will give you pop, and another one will be playing jazz music, and another one will play maybe Caribbean beats and whatnot. And so our bodies, our thoughts, our words, our point of attraction, our antennas are emitting a frequency every day, whether we like it or not. For for good and for worst, we're always emitting a certain frequency. And so what happens is that when you are vibrating at a certain emotion, when you're happy, when you're curious, when you're optimistic, when you're ecstatic, when you're interested, your antenna is is saying, this is where I'm at, bring me more of that, right? And then there's no exclusion. That is a very important thing to consider, because sometimes we want to kind of trick ourselves or try to trick the universe in saying, I just don't want X or Y, right? Like, I wish I wouldn't have any more debt. And since there's no exclusion, what the antenna is ultimately emitting is the idea of debt. And therefore, you get more bills and you get kind of more evidence that the bills just keep piling up, and it feels like you're going in the opposite direction of where you actually want to go. So instead of thinking of debt, maybe you want to think of abundance. Maybe you want to think of ways in which maybe not financially or economically you are where you would like to be, but you maybe do have abundance of health, or of, I don't know, if you have a roof under your head, or if you have food in your fridge, or if you had a nice cup of tea or a nice cup of coffee this morning, or that's why I wanted to talk about focus, because there's this saying that I really love and that I always have to think about it so much. It's so weird that I just don't know it by heart since I think about it so freaking often. Um, but where attention goes, energy flows, right? So, whatever you're paying attention to, consciously or unconsciously, however you're reacting to your day, consciously or unconsciously, you are calling out to receive the same thing that you're putting out. And so that for me was like a holy motherfucking shit point in my life, because that day it wasn't even like noon yet, and I had complained about so many things. And what really caught my eye is that it wasn't the complaint per se, it was the realization that I was putting my point of attraction in a super unnecessary place. So this is not to say that you shouldn't complain ever, or that you shouldn't feel mad, or that you shouldn't allow yourself to feel what we categorize as negative or bad feelings or emotions, because it's not how it goes. What I'm trying to say is it is important to give our emotions the space to move through and actually release them. Actually, emotions is energy in motion, right? So when you want to kind of suppress and make a tiny bubble and like press it down into your heart or your chest or your stomach or whatever that is, that's just like a capsule of something that is on the long run not going to be great for you, you know? So it's not that you shouldn't be angry, or that you shouldn't be mad, or that you shouldn't be frustrated, or that you shouldn't express your feelings. It's quite the contrary. Au contraire, mon ami. Let it out, but just give it the space to flow, to move, to release, and then go ahead and focus on something that actually feels nice and go with the rest of your day being as conscious as possible of your point of attraction, right? This was a very interesting exercise for me, because I was so used to complaining about the tiny little things. And it was the reaction towards the situation, but it was also the reaction that I was having towards myself. That same day that I'm telling you about, I dropped a pencil, right? Like, I was working and I like to use several colors and several types of markers and inks and whatnot. And I had like a pen or a pencil, I don't remember. But point is, I dropped it. I was writing, I dropped it. And besides being like fee, fi, fo, not only was I mad to the situation, with the situation, I was so mad with myself. My self talk, my narrative, The way I talked to myself was so bloody toxic, like you wouldn't believe. And I now looking back say, no shit, you were depressed. And this is not to say that it was entirely like I'm not blaming my depression on myself. And obviously, I'm not blaming you if you are in a terrible situation, because it's not black or white, and everyone's process is different and everyone's situation is different. Um, and it wasn't just that one thing, right? I think it was like an accumulation of different situations and basically just like this package of things that eventually got me to the point where I was really depressed. And I'm not blaming that depression on this one thing, but it was a factor to consider, really. Like my self-talk was so freaking negative. I was always mean to myself. I was always telling myself off, and especially over the tiniest, silliest things. Again, talking about like the pen that I dropped, I was like, oh, you're so stupid. How come? Like, I don't even feel comfortable saying the words right now just to make the example of how it was, because by now, after years of practicing and focusing and watching my reactions, I've learned to identify whenever I want to go down that road of being mean to myself. And I'm like, mm-mm, not anymore, lady. And so I stopped. But back in the day, it was just my normal being mean to myself, telling myself off every day, especially over the stupidest, tiniest things, was such a common thing for me to do. And so basically, that one day that I decided to wake up and see how I reacted to my day and to like the little and the big was so important, because as I told you, like your antenna is always asking for more of whatever your vibration is. So it's like the universe is always checking when you're at, and whatever you're at is like, oh, you like that, let me give you more of that, let me give you more of that, let me give you more of that. And so that's why I tell you there's no exclusion, because if you're thinking about pain and you're thinking about I want this pain to be gone, then everything around you is going to be evidence of more pain. Because even if you're saying I don't want pain, since there's no exclusion, the remaining factor of that equation is pain, and therefore everything around you is going to give you evidence and make you think of and make you feel pain. So the trick here, and what I wanted to talk about when I say focus, is precisely that. What are you focusing on? What has your attention? What are you thinking about? What are you talking about? What are you watching? What are you reading? What are you writing? How are you reacting to your life? Because it sounds pretty simple, and it really is. I mean, it's simple and it's easy to say. When it comes to actually practicing it, I ain't gonna lie to you, honey, it takes a while. It takes a while because our beautiful and brilliant minds have this whole system, right? So we've got these things that are called neurons in our brains, and they are like these beautiful glowy thingies. And then when you learn stuff, sometimes they're like apart, but then when you start learning different things, they start creating like different paths. And think about when you learn to ride a bike, if you know how to do that, or when you learn to drive, if you know how to do that, or when you're probably not going to remember this, but probably when you were learning to brush your teeth, it was super weird first, because it's it was the getting used to making certain movements and coordinations, and to taking the time to like nail the wrist and the whatnot to make sure you get your teeth cleansed. How do you say that? And basically, at the beginning, when we're learning something new, whether that's a new sport, a new language, a new action, a new attitude, aptitude, or attitude, it takes time because the neurological paths aren't quite there yet. Now, what happens when we practice long enough and often enough is that those paths that weren't formed start becoming like a road, like a proper road. So we go from nothing to a connection, and then this connection becomes like thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker till it actually becomes like an automatic thing, right? Like at the beginning, if you know how to drive, you had to be super aware and conscious of so many different things at the same time, right? Like, okay, step number one, I get in the car, and then I close the door, and then I put on my seatbelt, and then I put the key in when you had a key, or if I press the button on, and then I check the mirrors, and then I just make sure I'm comfortable enough, and then I check like the other mirrors again, and while I'm driving, I check like the people around me and the surroundings, and who's walking and who's not, and the bike, and da da da. And it was just like a lot of information at the same time that seemed like it needed like 10,000% of your attention, and it still does. Like, I pray to God, if you if you drive, you're still focusing your attention fully and your awareness fully while driving. But what I mean is that that process that first had to be consciously thinking about it step by step, now it just happens, right? Like now you get in, sit down, close the door, put the seatbelt on, tack it, tack it. It just flows because it becomes kind of automatic. Or same thing with the bike. Like at the beginning, you were trying to find your balance, and you would obviously like fall down several times, and you learn to kind of how to turn around and how to move a little bit here and a little bit there and whatnot. And as you kept doing it, riding the bicycle just became easier. So basically, our thoughts, our behaviors are kind of the same thing. So our brain is such a wonderful machine, for better and for worse, because it's going to get to the point where it's going to get used to whatever you feed it. Now, the great news is that you can, as you learn to do one thing, you can learn to do another one, right? So for me, for example, I was so used to complaining about stuff, about irrelevant stuff. It was just like my automatic mode. Like it's like I only knew one feeling and one emotion, which was anger. Like that's the only output that I had kind of on an automatic, ready to go for whatever type of situation. I was really good at being mad, and I was really good at complaining. And I guess nowadays we call that the victim mentality. And honestly, it was a very sour pillow to swallow, because nobody likes to realize that you're being the freaking creator of your own life. And especially if you're being a victim of your own situation, you're creating just more and more drama. And another thing, even, is that it's so impressive how we become addicted to those things. Because again, your brain is now used to that scenario, to that reaction. So it's automatic. You don't even have to think about it. It just boom goes. Like in a blink, it just goes. So I think the thing that was interesting for me here is that it took a while. Okay, obviously it didn't happen overnight, that I just realized like on a Tuesday that I was complaining about everything, and then by Friday I was like, rainbows and cherries and butterflies and whatnot. It's definitely not how it went. It was a process. It took a while. And also, let me say something interesting that I actually did not say in in the episode that I just recorded in Spanish. But also, progress is not linear, honey. That's like, I think, the biggest lie that I told myself, and that actually stopped me from getting better at so many things in shorter amounts of time, because I was convinced that progress was always like, and it's not. Progress looks like a bloody mess, darling. It looks like you're going good, and then it goes down, and then you go up a little bit more, and then it feels like you're going down to the center of the earth, and then you go up a little bit, and then a little bit more, and then, but eventually you get towards that goal, towards that attitude, towards that thing that you want to do, right? Like you actually get there. And this is to say, or to remind you, to be gentle and patient and loving with yourself. Within that negative narrative that I was telling you about, I was really harsh on myself as well on this type of things, right? Like I would set the intention to become a better person by not complaining so much, or for example, quit smoking. This is like, I feel, one of my biggest wins, that I'm so thankful I took that step, because I started smoking at a, I want to say relatively young age. I was like 18, probably. And at the beginning, it wasn't that bad, but then over time, it did get more intense, more often, more quantity. And so by the time I was maybe around 26, 27, I was really aware of how bad it was for me, and I really had the intention to quit. But also, I would be like, okay, this is my last cigarette, throw the pack away, and then I will not touch one cigarette for the rest of my life. And they would go by, and 2 days would go by, and 3 days would go by, and 4 days would go by, and I would not smoke. But on the fifth day, I would see someone smoking, or I would go to a party, or I would do whatever, Trevor, and I would smoke one cigarette, and I would be like, "Ah, you piece of shit! What have you done? Look at you, you're useless. You cannot get anywhere." And the negative was just like on and on and on and on and on in my head. And then I did this for several times during a long period, maybe like 4 or 5 years. I gave myself the ultimatum of being like, okay, this is it, I'm quitting forever. And then, however amount of time I managed to actually stop smoking, I would eventually relapse and start smoking again. And since I had that one cigarette, I would be like, well, you smoked, so you might as well keep on smoking now. And I finally got to a point after maybe 10 trial and error that I said, okay, like it's clear to me, I don't want to smoke. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be super patient about it. Because again, I at some point realized this thing that I told you about progress, right? And so I was like, I'm not going to try to do this overnight. I am not going to be mean to myself if I relapse. And I'm going to understand that it's a process and that it has ups and downs and high and lows. And so I'm going to take as much time as I need. And I literally took that to heart. I was like, if I need 3 years, I'm going to take my sweet motherfucking time and take 3 years to quit smoking. But I'm going to get there easily, lovingly, gently. Again, we're all different. To me, this is what worked. Maybe you are the type of person that really does need to be like enough, enough, and that's it. And I actually do know many people that have changed behaviors just like that, right? But what I want to share with you is that if you are like me and are trying to change something in your life, maybe cut yourself some slack, like maybe bet on the long run. Bet on the winnings of a long run, because it did take me maybe 2, 3 years. And it would be interesting because, like, when I like said it, let's say I went like 2 weeks without smoking, and then I had a cigarette, and then the 3 days after I had another 5 cigarettes, and then another 2 weeks would go by, and I would have maybe one cigarette, and then I have a super relapse, and I would go out and party and have like half a pack in like 2 hours. And so that came on, but as time went by, I would notice that the periods of time that I would stay without smoking kept getting longer and longer and longer. And especially every time after a very long period of time I smoked, I did not tell myself off. I was not mad at myself. I was actually quite gentle. And I told myself, okay, you hadn't had a cigarette for 5 months and now you smoked. It's perfectly fine. You can just wake up tomorrow and keep not smoking. And that's how I don't even know exactly when it was, because it was such a soft process that it wasn't like this date is when I stopped smoking, but I'm guessing it was around 2023, three that I really like touched the last cigarette. I even remember I was at a wedding and a friend of mine was smoking, and I came around and I was like, "Can I have a puff?" And she shared, and I remember I I say puff. I hope I'm getting it right. And I had a puff, and I was like, "Oh my God, this doesn't taste right. It actually tasted kind of disgusting to me." And that's when I realized, like, oh my goodness, I made it. I made it. I no longer like this thing. I no longer need it. I no longer crave it. I no longer appreciate it. And it really took me a long time. But I stopped and that was it. And I haven't felt the need to do it anymore. And I even see sometimes people smoking at 8 in the morning in their cars. And I just have like such a deep appreciation for the time and the gentleness that and the patience that I had towards myself in accepting to take time in that process and seeing how far I've come and realizing, like, holy shit, that was me. I would smoke like nonstop. When it got to the worst point of I was doing one after another, after another, after another, right? Like I was having maybe like a pack and a half a day, which is just awful. But well, to me today, like if you're doing it, I'm not here to criticize anyone. You're free to live the life that you please and that you want, and ultimately to do whatever you want to your body as long as you're not hurting others, right? I feel like that's where the line is drawn. Like do whatever the hell you want with your life, with your body, but don't mess with others people's lives, bodies, integrity, well-being. And this is like this whole cigarette story was to say that I feel changing your behavior towards a more positive one, if you were like me or if you are like I was, in complaining, in overreacting to like the tiniest of things, you can change that. It's going to take a while, it's going to take practice, and it's going to take observation and focus, but it's going to get easier and easier, and the more you do it the easier it becomes, and the more often you catch yourself and the more often you're able to correct that behavior and change it and even be playful about it and not take it too seriously. So I guess that's what I wanted to share with you today, to invite you to focus on your life, focus on where you're putting your energy, focus on the reactions you're having, focus on how you interpret certain things. And especially if you can maybe give it a twist, if it's not being something that feels good or that feels right or that feels pleasant, if it's within you, to maybe give it a little bit of a twist in very simple things like stabbing your toe or um, dropping your cell phone or dropping a pen, or I don't know, there's like millions of teeny tiny little things that can happen to you in a day that you can change your reaction little by little. And that change of reaction, it is a chain that will start changing where you are from complaining towards the universe showing you more and more evidence to have things to laugh about or be grateful about or just find interesting, or even feel neutral about it. You don't have to go, and actually it's not um, that common or easy to jump from super mad, disgusted, angry to blissful, happy, and peaceful, because the scale has a progress and a process. And there may be sometimes when you might jump from one to the other, but honestly, like the most normal one is jumping little by little. Like I didn't just stop complaining from one day to another. Maybe the first times I complain, and then the second ones I would more like observe it instead of complain about it, and then little by little I would start like even laughing. Like today I laugh about it. If I drop a pen, I'm like, oh, funny, like look at this happen. And I even like make it more so on purpose now that I know how my energy and my reactions create and attract more of that. I just play with it, and my life has gotten so much better, and there's so many tools that I need to attribute to that change in my life, from what I like to say, from depressed to blessed. But noticing my reactions and my behaviors and my way of interpreting things and reacting to them was definitely a huge game changer to me, for me in my life. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Invite you to maybe focus, take a look, take a second to analyze how you're feeling, how you're reacting, how you're doing towards certain things in life, and play a little bit with that. Obviously, from love, with love. That's always the most gentle and what I feel it's the most effective road towards a life of happiness and fulfillment and well being and just, fun and pleasure in general. So that's it for today. I am thinking that I feel like I gave it a very different approach to the episode from the one in Spanish to the one in English. So I might need to figure out how to play with both languages because at the end of the day, the gist of the thing is there, but I do kind of go around it in different ways, and maybe one will resonate more with you than the other. So may you find the one that is best for you. I'm sending you lots of love. Thank you for being here, not just this podcast, but here on planet Earth, living the human experience, bringing your beautiful presence and energy. I appreciate you. I love you. And I will see you on the next one. Ciao.